is Lauren.
And I'm Jerri.
And we are...
Several drinks in.
So several that the cups are empty at this point.
Why do we even have them?
Exactly. Today on our podcast, we talk to Shari
Inniss-Grant.
It is so wonderful. We sit down and we talk about all the different ways in which our lives are diverse.
Yes.
We talk about her experience overseas, you know, as a Barbadian living overseas, working for a charitable organization.
Yeah.
Listen, this one is one to watch.
It really is.
It really is.
It's gonna be a different vibe though. We did this one on site.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Filming at Shari's beautiful home.
Beautiful house.
So we won't look like this. We're going to the beach in like 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes, we're going to be
So it's going to be a different vibe, yeah.
But that episode, to me, it was wonderful. It was wonderful to kind of like speak to other people kind of like out there experiencing like different things in different ways. I mean, we're all Bajans, but to see what it's like for other Bajans living outside of Barbados and their experience is always wonderful to me.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I have a travel bug. So I always want to go and leave Barbados and see the world. So talking to Shari for me was amazing, you know, to see her experience and what her lived experience was living in a different part of the world.
Yeah. It was actually very interesting. And kind of similar to the conversation we had with Shani.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually. It's very interesting how they aren't working at the same place.
No, but very, very similar.
But very similar experience,
yeah.
And they're both living at different parts of the world, but their experiences are so similar. It is wonderful. It's a wonderful episode. So, as always, you know what you're going to do? You're going to smash that like button.
Hit subscribe.
And click on that notification bell. We love you guys, and we really hope you enjoy this episode as much as we do.
We hope you do.
We know
we
you
are
will.
clearly very late. So, see you guys next week.
A couple more than 2 drinks in at this point.
And we are 2 drinks in. Are we forgetting how to do this?
No, I don't know how to do it. I'll say, hi guys, my name is Lauren and this is Jerri and we are 2 drinks in. Today we have a very, very special guest. Today we have Shari Inniss-Grant. Hi everyone.
Whoop, whoop. That's Mia's part, but she's not here.
Yeah. That's it. You gotta represent, you know? You have to represent. So we are very excited to have you here. I feel like maybe for us, this is one of the episodes that we've been waiting, or one of the conversations that we've been waiting to have.
Yeah.
You know, with you, just because you're like super interesting.
Thank you.
You know, and I think you have different facets. You have a lot of different facets of things going on. So you want to start by telling us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I've been doing a lot of spiels about myself because I did a round of like job interviews and you have to think about the way that you introduce yourself and what you say. And I always start with, I'm an aspiring leader from the global south to make myself sound super like anybody. Steal that.
Oh, yeah.
To make myself sound super fancy. But me, I'm 30-something, living in Turkey currently, working on the Syria cross-border stuff, and single, very ready to mingle. So, anyone cute who's out there, I'm here. And I think that's the major introduction. Like, my life is basically revolving around my work. So a lot of the work I do is with affected people because I'm an AAP advisor.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's it.
What's an A? What you said? AFP?
AAP.
AAP. What does that mean?
So it's about accountability to affected people. And essentially what it means is that when you have humanitarians on the ground and they're providing people with a range of things that they need, from like water to sanitation, healthcare, education, that they should be listening to what the people actually say that they want. as opposed to just being like, no, I know better. I'm going to come in and tell you exactly what it is I think you need. And then I'm only going to give you those things. And anytime you try to correct me, I'm going to be like, you're wrong. You don't understand your situation.
You're wrong. I'm right. Shut up.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like the whole system, like the whole humanitarian system, which involves like the UN and a bunch of like really big international NGOs and then small kind of NGOs working on the ground, are having to deal with this shift and this shift from being super kind of product driven where you like that what you work on is tents. So if what you work on is tents and somebody comes to you and they're like, I need some shelter, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna give you tents.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe that person needs something a bit different, like maybe they need a caravan, maybe they need just something else entirely, and you haven't really taken the time to sit and listen to what people are saying. So that's it.
That's really interesting. And it's very funny because to know that there's somebody out there doing that, because I remember I did a stint of volunteering in my early 20s, and that was one of the things. We didn't have an AAP advisor in our organization, but that's one of the things we worked really hard on, literally going out and canvassing and making sure that what we did was what they wanted and what they needed and things that could help, instead of what we thought they needed. Right. And what we thought. And we actually found like a lot of the things that we came down with our ideas of what we would do, they didn't need. Right. You know, they didn't actually, it didn't one fit with their culture. Two, it wasn't something that they really were concerned about. Right. Because we came down with our ideas of what their quality of life should be. Right. They were very happy with those things, but there were all these other things that it would be simple for us to help them with. Right. Right. But because we asked, we were able to get there. So it's very interesting and great to see that you are out there doing that, actually helping people get what they need instead of what we think we should give them, you know? Yeah, exactly. So I'm one of a few. I actually have a partner on the ground who is really amazing and speaks the local language, which is definitely what you need and the way to go. And he does like wonderful canvassing with people. People really trust him. Yeah. He's part of the affected people as well because he's a refugee. So yeah, he really has that insight. And it's good to be able to work together to balance it between the theory and the practical hands-on things. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. How did you get there? I don't know. I think so when I was a little girl. No. I was about to say I got the goosebumps. Tell me about your little girl dreams.
I can see her getting excited.
I think when I was a little girl, honestly, the thing that I wanted to do was to work overseas and to work in a bunch of different countries around the world, and to travel and to see the world. So now that I'm working in the humanitarian field, I do get to work in a bunch of different countries. It's just not the countries that you would ever go to for tourism.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I'm waiting to hear more about your time in South Sudan.
Yeah, so I was in South Sudan, and then... yeah, now working in Turkey with the cross-border mission to Syria. And before all of that, I was working with the UN in Barbados. And we had a couple, remember when the Dominica was hit by the hurricanes? Well, a few other countries that we cover as part of the OECS were hit as well. To a much lesser degree, but they still needed some support. So I was working with the all of the members of the UN family, which is vast. I mean, you have UN Women, you have WFP, which does World Food Program, which is all about feeding people they need. You have FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. You had UNFPA, which is all about sexual and reproductive health and rights. And just everybody was coming on board to be like, what can we do? And they had mandated roles that they're supposed to be playing. So I was helping and assisting them to get the aid faster to the affected population. But I have to say, I'm not sure how well we did the job of making sure that affected people were consulted. I know that some of the agencies were doing that on the ground and getting some information back, but I wasn't working as an AAP focal point at that point. So after that, I went to South Sudan, and South Sudan was a very interesting experience. I came back and I kept saying, like, you know, if I never see another man with a machine gun, who hasn't been paid his wages in a year, I will be happy.
Wow.
Because it was so common to see like the soldiers and they have their machine guns and they're like going about their daily work. You see them in their uniforms, but you know that actually the country is running way behind on the payments to soldiers.
Yeah.
And that even when they do get it, inflation is so bad that essentially what they're being given as a year's wages would maybe cover them for half a month, 2 weeks. And they have to, you know, feed a whole family on that. So what do you do in that context? What do you do in that situation? How do you survive? How do you make sure your family's taken care of? And when you think through some of the repercussions of that for the soldiers and their families, for everybody else, and you think about, well, how it would incentivize bad behavior, and then you can't really blame them for the bad behavior because it's like, well, you don't have any way to meet your own needs.
Exactly.
So
you're going to do what you have to do to feed your family, to feed your children, and to, you know.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, but you still condemn the bad behavior.
It's like a double-edged sword, you know?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you kind of understand where it's stemming from, and you understand why they would be drawn to it. But on the other hand, you know.
On the other hand, it's like really affecting people's lives, people's sense of safety, everything, you know? So it was a really intense experience. And then after that, I came home for a little while, for a few months, and then left again for Turkey.
That sounds really great.
Turkey?
The whole experience, like, I think, and maybe not for everybody, but I like the idea of being thrown into something new.
Yeah.
And not knowing. I mean, yes, I can see how, of course, there would be downfalls and like uncomfortable situations and scary situations, because that sounded a little scary to me.
It was a little scary.
Yeah.
It was often.
Right?
It was quite often a little scary. But like, I remember going to sleep at night and I'd hear gunshots, and I was living in a very, very, very nice apartment. And you would hear like the gunshots on the road, and then you would like wait and be like, is anything happening? Is anyone reacting? You check your phone to see if there are any messages in your phone to evacuate. Like, and then you'd be like, okay, no, it's just gunshots. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And you're not being affected by that because you're behind very thick walls that will hopefully keep you safe.
Hopefully.
But they also, like, you know, when you're working with any organization, part of their duty of care is that they run you through these situations with the bunkers, right? So, like, you know, when you might need to go to a bunker, you know what the bunker looks like, how to locate it, where it is, the amount of days that you might have to try to survive in a bunker. So, yeah, but it never came to that. But I definitely know other people who had a bad ride. I mean, one of our drivers got abducted, not once, but twice while just performing his work. And they held him for money and all of that kind of stuff. And then you have to get the negotiations going. And the UN took care of it. I have no idea if that's like at a higher level than I'm at.
And he came back to work.
He came back to work.
Listen, I would have left the country. I would have gone somewhere else. I'm not sure.
I would immediately be like, okay, I think that's my time. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
But it's actually, I feel like, man, so much of it is the politics of the global south and like the economic politics of the global south, that like when you're taking care of, you know, when you have a job in a situation like that where so few people have jobs and employment, and there's so much poverty and there's so much need. You know, like over 50% of the country was in need of some level of humanitarian assistance. And it was actually much higher than that, the rate. And the amount that was being targeted was, of course, smaller than the number of people in need. So you weren't even reaching everybody who needed it because you didn't have enough money or enough supplies or all of these different reasons. So you live in that country as a citizen of the country, right? And a lot of people had their families outside of the country to keep them safe. But you have to continue going to work because you're making a really good paycheck and you have a lot of people to take care of.
Okay, Shari. So do you feel like your time here, well, working in Barbados, prepared you at all for working overseas?
Yeah, I definitely think it did. But I think it was in part the places that I worked here were always so I worked at IGDS, which is the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, when I first came back. That was my first job.
You know Leanne.
Yeah, Leanne is my
Hey.
what is it? Like, I'm her predecessor, so she's my
Right, she took over your position, right?
Successor.
Successor.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
Successor.
Thank you. English. What is it? So she took over the position, and then after that, I worked with UNDP for a while, and then I worked with the resident coordinator's office. So just with the UN. So it was either UN or Institute for Gender and Development Studies, and both were really good experiences. Very different. With IGDS, they really encourage you to have a voice and to be outspoken and to like, you know, go on to the radio and on to television and to have all those talks about gender and what it is and what it isn't for the Caribbean, and really make sure that we're having those discussions with the public. With the UN, it's a little different in that they have a spokesperson. So they have people whose job it is to speak on behalf of the UN. And then nobody else is supposed to. So you kind of have to be really careful about what you're doing and what you're saying, because you don't want it to be interpreted as, well, the UN thinks this, or the UN says this about these people.
So no bad PR.
No bad PR. No bad PR. Yeah. So I think working there, because it was really intense workload, it was intense hours, it was intense everything, because we were covering 10 countries. And I left shortly before there was a restructuring. So my department went from having one person to having 10 people. And I was like, okay, so somewhere along the lines, I feel like I was doing the job of 3 or 4 people at some point. And they recognized that, and then they put in just a different system, a different way of making it work. But yeah, so having worked there, I think I'm definitely prepared to work with the UN again in Turkey.
So it's like, I've done that. I feel like I can do anything now.
Not anything. I feel like I can do some things now. Like, I feel like I have some skills that I can offer to people. You know, like, you get to that point. You guys aren't there yet. How old are you guys?
I am 29.
28. You're 28.
Okay.
I'm 28.
Oh, yeah, you're 29.
I'm 28. Y'all hear her? 28. That's what
She
she
just turned 29.
said. It was just my birthday.
Ooh.
Oh, shit. I'm going to be 29 this year.
Yeah, right? So I think I'm in my mid-30s, and you hit a point where, like, you better have some skills that you've learned along the way. You better have some, like, knowledge and experience that you've gained that can help you get to the next level.
Yeah. I feel like
Because-
even with the worst jobs, you always... Well, I try to learn at least one good thing from them.
Yeah.
Even if it's how to not run a company.
You can learn that. You can learn that. You know, and there were definitely things that I saw at one of my jobs where it wasn't with us, but it was with a partner that we were working with, and you're kind of like, wow, this is not a good situation for anybody. Like, there's some corruption stuff going on. There's just, like, not good balance. But I think it talks, like, that's partly because the Caribbean doesn't always have a good process for building up NGOs. Like, you have a person who's the head of the NGO, and you imagine that that person is going to be the head of the NGO forever, into perpetuity, but you're just like, no, eventually you're going to have to leave and move on to something else, and you haven't groomed, like, somebody to take over from you. So I think it's some of that stuff going on. Good people.
Where do we want to jump in with that one?
Race.
Exactly.
Is it Caribbean racism or just like Barbados is a special case?
No, I think you know what it is. Like, what Black Lives Matter proves is that it's actually worldwide racism. It's just racism everywhere. And then every country has its own unique flavor.
Yeah.
So, like, in the US, it's police brutality and, you know, state-sponsored terrorism. And because let's not pretend that the FBI did not try to shut down the Black Panthers. And they still, I'm sure, have some cell open that's, like, monitoring different Black groups of color or whoever. And here in Barbados, it is colorism and classism to the millionth degree.
Can we talk
Nepotism.
about how? So I think like literally what you said is it. It is based on the history of a country.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, like, depending on the history of like the country, what has happened, you see different ways in which it like shows its head. So I find here in Barbados, right, we have very educated people, but all of us are competing in an unfair society, in a society that always benefits people of one, lighter color skin, and two, like non-black ethnicities. And it's really sad to say, but even when we look at the systems and the institutions that we have, and we look at how they treat their employees and treat their people and treat the people that fall under them, the people who they are bound to protect and to serve and stuff like that, it's different. Like we don't get treated equally. Like I had an argument with a friend, and I can't believe I'm gonna say this on camera. I had an argument with a friend, and I was a little like taken aback by her arguments about what she wants and what the person wants and where they are going. Because my thing was, by her conversation, is that she's totally disregarding herself.
How so?
Because the person is a strong black person, beautiful person, right, in themselves. But by deciding that is not good enough, and that they can only want something else, something
so
that
like
is
wanting to be somebody who's Caucasian,
yes,
or right,
or only wanted to have experiences with those people, you are now saying to yourself that you are not good enough. That she as a person, you really thought trying to non-gender and
it's internalized racism.
Yeah, it's, and then when you look at our history, right? Like, to Barbados, the slave was a thing. Like, I remember when I learned that, and don't come for me if it's not Willie Lynch, that he left Barbados and went to North Carolina. And we always talk about our links. To have a speech about how to Barbados a slave, they talk about how we were the society for the most docile people. Yeah, but I don't necessarily think it was that. I think that we were the society where you sent the people to be trained, to be taught how to be obedient. Because he went over there and he was training people on how to, get your slaves to fall in line, and how to, have them be polite to massa, and how to have them turn against each other. So they're kind of the ones keeping themselves, in line. You don't really have to do anything if, you get everybody else to kind of, and I mean, when you look at society, no, that's what we're doing still.
Oh, of course. Like, we haven't divested from like the actual remnants of plantocracy or the patriarchy that's like built into it, the really complex systems of understanding identity and race and gender, and how that all plays into it too. So we end up with a way of being in the world that is really messed up.
Yeah. And I think maybe one of the things, and I mean, I know this is so non-specific, and people are going to be, I'm not going to help. But I think one of the things we can do to just kind of help the stories is kind of just teach our culture and our history and our what happened like previously, but not that watered down version that we get. Not the watered down, we were kind of slaves and we were brought over from Africa.
Did you get that? Was that how you were taught it?
I don't even think I was really taught it.
But it just like filtered in. It was part of like the mass messaging.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear when people say things like, if not for slavery, then the Caribbean wouldn't be the way that it is today. And there's at least one good thing that came out of slavery. And I'm like, there are no good things that came out of slavery. Like, you just have people who learn to survive in a variety of ways. And even going back to that comment about the Barbadian enslaved population being docile, is like, it depends on the geography of the country that you're in. Barbados is 166 square miles, and there's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide.
Where are you gonna go?
A lot of people ran and were killed.
Right. And it's very small. So then when you look at a place like Jamaica, where they literally had a village of former slaves that was called Me No Send, You No Come. And I'm like, isn't that just the perfect name? I'm not sending anybody. but you shouldn't be coming to me either. Like, this is our agreement that we have reached. Like, I don't send them, you don't come. But in Barbados, you don't have any opportunity to have that. Like, even now, when you move out from your parents, how far away can you get?
Exactly.
Like, you just move to a different parish. So, and then when you move, you can move to a different plantation, but it's all the same.
But where are you going?
Where are you going? So you have to find ways to subvert that are more passive. And I think that is why, I don't know if other people see this, but Barbados is such an intensely passive aggressive society. The only way I've ever been in the world that was more passive aggressive was South Sudan. And I think it's because we didn't have anywhere to run. So we learned all of these behaviors that have been passed down by generations that are just like, okay, you know, you go in and you ask some person to give you, let's say, a juice box or cigarettes from behind the counter, and the person will stop, look you dead in the eye, and then just not say a word, turn around, walk as slowly as they can, pick it up, and then slowly drag their feet and bring it back to you. And you're like, having studied, you know, the Atlantic slave trade, I'm like, okay, yeah, this was a delay factor. Like, you could go slow on plantations, but you couldn't actually stop working.
Yeah.
You know, so you find all these ways to sabotage the work that's happening. And I feel like we still see that today.
And I think people are triggered. Like, it's, and I think maybe some of the triggering is subconscious, because you're saying that, right? And I'm linking back to a previous off-camera conversation we're having, where we're talking about how a lot of the work environments can kind of trigger this feeling of not being in control, being controlled, and being unfavorably taken advantage of. And
being like super poorly managed. Yeah. You're just like, we don't have a meritocracy. So like, I remember one of the best things about being a little girl in Barbados was you see these examples of other Black women and Black men who are successful. Your whole system teaches you when you're young that you should aspire, you should have big goals, you should want big things, that those things are possible for you. And like, that's the best part of it. Like, you have that real sense of faith put in yourself. But then you hit a certain point where you meet the reality of the situation. And you're like, is there something wrong with me? Yeah. Is there like a reason that I'm being treated so poorly? Is there a reason that these people aren't choosing to pay me? Like, or that they're like messing me around in the ways that they structure my hours or my work or things like that. Yeah. And then you just get people acting out in response to it.
And what's sad to me is that we're doing it to ourselves, you know? Like, I always say to people, and when we talk about government, who works in the government?
Black people.
We work in the government. Like, I always ask myself, we always like to point one finger at one person in the government. But everybody knows a friend who works in some government office who's decided at 2:00 they ain't doing no more work.
Right.
What's our biggest pet peeve? Going to government offices at 2:00. Government offices that close at 4:30, and
there's nobody.
Right.
Nobody's being there.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I always say to people, you know, we need to be better to ourselves.
But we need a whole system that allows us that, because I feel like they're like, so we're talking about them responding to like this really problematic system, right? And you end up with these plantocracies. Barbados is still a plantocracy. I can think of places that I've worked that I'm like, no, you're the overseer. You're the person in charge. Like, you're the plantation owner. This person reports to you. These people report to that person. Like, why is Barbados structured like that? Where you can only really deal with the person who's your immediate supervisor. And if you have a problem with them, then maybe you can stand beyond it. But it's very difficult because that person reports the next person, reports the next person, and only the plantation owner, whoever owns the business, whoever is the final word on things, can actually say how things should be done.
And the people who you're reporting to might be friends with the owner. Yeah. And therefore, when you report to them, you get fired. I've literally been in situations before where people just shut up and take it.
Yeah.
Right?
Because what other choice do you have?
Exactly. Do you want
I remember
to lose your
being warned
job?
at one job that if I complained about this particular situation, I was going to lose it. And I did.
And they fired you. Yeah. But, you know, and then they went out of business.
Yeah.
Yay!
But
Justice.
I know that's a youth thing. Like that's something maybe particularly maybe with our generation. And I don't want to like claim all the kudos or anything like that. But I feel like we've been growing in this place where we're like, nah, you know, pointing fingers and being like, do better. And it's something that maybe, I think maybe with a lot of social media, you see a lot on social media, where the first thing we want to do is pull out our phones and record the injustices. And I'm not saying necessarily that's maybe the best reaction, but what it allows us to do, like what we're doing by doing it is being like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
We're showing everybody that this isn't right. Do not come for me today. And it's the one thing that leaves me hopeful, because I have literally seen people sit down in situations where they're being taken advantage of, right? They are not being paid properly for what they're doing, even though, and it's one thing when the money isn't there. It's another thing when the money is there, just people not doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Right? And like, don't get me wrong, I am a strong believer. I believe 100% that if your bottom person isn't doing their job, it's because top leadership isn't doing their job. I don't ever believe, like, I know it's always one talk about how it's us in the government and it's us, but I don't ever believe it's the person at the bottom who's not doing their job. Yes, you're seeing it because that's the person you're interacting. But when you got always tell organizations who have good leadership, you walk in the store and you don't want to leave. You just go and you chat with the people because the people are happy to talk to you. And it's not like an overtly Lauren happy. I'm an overtly like in your face, like annoy you happy. It's just this feeling of, you're not actually bothering me that you're in here.
Right.
You know, and it's this nice, warm, inviting kind of feeling.
Yeah.
You know where it's got hit? And you know, I shamelessly plug these people, but Second Encore. And I know that's a really like small environment. It's literally a small team of people. Have you ever gone in Second Encore and want to leave?
No, they're very friendly.
Right.
They take all my money every time.
Every single time.
You go in there for one thing and then you'll be like, oh, $500.
And they're like, and we
Is
recently
that my
got
bill?
this in.
Exactly. And they look at you in the clothes and they tell you, oh no, I don't like you in that.
But you should
Right?
try this.
But
This
here,
looks
but
like it
look,
would fit
this
you
will bring
nicely.
and you know, you should put this on. I'm not sure if it will look good on you. I saw another girl in this and it might look good.
Oh,
It might
yeah.
look good on your body type.
Listen.
And then you put on the thing and it don't look good on you and they're like, no, don't get it.
I have a
Right?
whole lambskin jacket because of Second Encore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's that sort of welcoming environment. And I know that's not necessarily the best example because it's a very close-knit
And they are family, yeah.
right? It's a very close-knit family in there. But that it's the feeling I'm trying to explain, you know, where you go in a place. And I'm sure, and y'all can comment on this, I'm sure you can think of other places where you go in and you feel like, oh, I don't need to leave in here. And you spend like maybe an hour and you plan to only be in there for 10 minutes. But you can always kind of tell when the management is doing well.
Yeah.
To me, it always starts with management. I always say to people, why are you training your staff and you ain't training the managers? Like, the staff not going to be any different because the staff respond to managers. So, even though I do think that we are the people and we should always try to be our best selves. Always, always, always. Because you're not trying to be your best self for anybody else.
Yeah.
You always, like, there are always mitigating factors. People can be trained to be their best selves. And people will not be their best selves if they can't want to do the things that they need to do. And I'm sorry, right? But I can pause here. Because, you know, I go going down in the rabbit hole. I was supposed to start talking about all the system that support us to just have our hierarchy of needs. Just the things we need.
No, I agree with you. Like, people need to be able to meet their hierarchy of needs. Like, they need to be able to, like, have water and food and shelter and, you know, take care of their families so that they feel safe. And then when they have all of those things, they can come to work and be productive.
Oh, yeah.
But in the absence of that, or if the job is actually undermining their access to that, what else do you expect people to do? How do you expect them to react to you? You know? And as scary as it is, maybe those people giving you terrible service are doing the best that they can within the current situation, which lets you know that this situation is rancid.
I think maybe 70% of the time, the people who you're speaking to are doing the best that they can in the situation that you have. Because, and the reason I say that is because I usually start interactions with, hello, how are you doing?
Yeah.
To kind of just like shift the narrative to, because now you have to stop and you have to think, and you're like, somebody's asking you about you, and you realize it's not just that. You can kind of like recenter into yourself. I just do it. It's just something I do. I find
think
people
that's very kind.
like respond better, right? It's a little selfish because I just want you to not be in that mood of, and to maybe be like, oh, I'm okay, how are you doing? And then you can start chatting, and then you realize that you're talking to a person, because a lot of things become very rote. I understand. It becomes very rote, and the person becomes just another thing you have to do before the end of the day. When you start chatting, it becomes a little
more
bit
of a relationship. Yeah.
You understand it's a person on another line. Yeah. And you find when you do that, you get a lot better responses most of the time, which is why I say 70% of the people are just responding to the situations they're in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just try not to number out there based on my experiences. And maybe more, maybe less. But I really do feel that it kind of boils all the way back down to how we treat ourselves and how we treat our employees. And I feel that all the way boils all the way back down to our history of, slavery and racism. And
that we haven't, I mean, honestly, so we talk about racism a lot. I feel like everybody's had that conversation, especially around Black Lives Matter. Like, you kind of have to have the conversation.
Yeah.
But Barbados hasn't actually dealt with its racist past. And I remember listening to the radio, and one of the announcers was saying, he doesn't buy it that Barbados is a society of primarily marginalized people because Black people are the majority. And I'm like, being the majority does not stop you from being vulnerable to all of the structural racism that is in place. It just means that more people are being affected by it in your society. That's all it means. So
we're so accustomed. It's almost normal to us. I actually think that is so sad. That's the thing that saddens me. We are so accustomed that is normal. That you can literally like look at your daily lives and see different points in where like you have been affected, like little minor touch points. But it's so like we're so accustomed to it. We're like, it doesn't matter to us. We don't even realize that that's what it is. I mean, so now we're talking about like the difference in services, which is something that you would have off-camera discussion. Guys, we have a lot of off-camera discussions. But something that we would have just talked about, right? Where different skin colors receive different service in a lot of establishments. Not all. I always say try not to generalize, but a lot of establishments. Yeah. Right? How it is that you are not treating the majority of people you have. The majority of people in Barbados are Black and beautiful. Not white. Black and beautiful.
90%.
Right? How are we not treating them like the royalty, like the creme?
I mean, some of my most racist experiences at work were from Black employees. and my coworkers. Emery knows about this experience. But when I was working on the boat, one of the guys on the boat, I came to work with my hair open. That would have been like maybe a month or two after I started working there, because I had braids in when I started, and that was the first time he would have seen my hair open. It's like, you're working like that. And I was like, okay, you have a problem with my hair? And he told me that his aunt was a hairdresser and she would never put her hand in my head because, that was something that I was told at work.
Because why? Why would she never put? Okay, first of all,
because apparently my natural hair was disgusting.
Your natural hair was disgusting. Because blackness is disgusting. That's what they're really saying. Like when you say that.
And he was darker than me.
Of course.
Not just darker than me, but darker than Emery.
Yeah.
And then he followed that up with, well, when I was a baby, I was very, very light skinned. And you should see my hair when.
Oh my goodness.
That's really sad.
It's so sad. And I think
No, I called him Uncle Ruckus, and then he didn't know what that meant. Didn't understand what that meant, and I and the myself and the the chef, myself and the white chef in the room, we exchanged a look, and he laughed, and I laughed, and then I continued on, And he explained to him that I basically told him that he has a self-hate problem. The fact that the white chef recognized what I told him and he didn't.
Yeah, I don't really know how you even begin to have the conversations about race when that is the starting point.
I was just like, who raised you?
Yeah.
But who raised you to hate yourself?
Yeah,
like to
exactly.
genuinely hate yourself? Who told you every day that you used to be a pretty baby because you were light skinned? Like had to be telling you every day
Yeah.
That
for you
was
to
so
really take in
sad.
that message and then not only take it in but spew it back out and feel like you were in the right lane with that.
And these people have children.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if his children look just like he does?
Which is more likely than not. Which is, yeah, I don't know. So race in Barbados.
Like if you know something, if you learn something, that's how you behave. You know, I can't behave like anybody else and how I learn how to behave. And I can't be mad if somebody else behaving like how they learn how to behave. What we can try to do is try to unlearn the behaviors.
Oh yeah, and it takes time.
It takes lots. It takes and recognition. I mean, the man didn't even know what Uncle Ruckus was.
He didn't.
The
But
self-hate.
he didn't like even understand that he was saying something to you that was, he honestly said that to you trying to help you. He wanted you to know because clearly you didn't understand. Right? And he wanted you to know so that you could from then on perform the roles that you were meant to perform.
Yeah. We had some really interesting conversations at that job.
I would love to hear more of that.
So do you have any experiences with racism and or sexism that you're willing to share with us today?
There's so much stuff with sexism. With racism, there's less. I mean, other than the kind of way that it shows up in the interactions that you have with fellow Black people, where you're just like, this is a bunch of internalized racism that you're spewing at me in this moment, or like how you're disregarding me as a customer, or like these a whole range of things. I don't have that many. I mean, I think being in Barbados, when I was young, I went to this preschool, and I was the only Black person. And I did not have any friends at all for like 3 years. And I thought, okay, well, it's just because I don't really want to be their friend anyway. And I was like 5 years old thinking this stuff, you know, I was like, I'm not really interested in these people. I was taller than they were and they would always put me in the back row. So I was like, first of all, I think I'm 8, although I was 5. And I was like, of course, I'm not hanging out with any of these little kids. Like, why would I be doing that? And then I remember thinking it distinctly one day, and it may not even sound real, but it's true. I remember thinking, being on the playground, and we were scooping sand. I was to one side, and these two little girls were playing by themselves. And then I was like, do I want to go over there? No. I was like, why? And then I was like, I'm a loner. Like, distinctly remember that, thinking that at like 5. And my happiest moment was when my teacher taught me how to throw myself on the swings. And I was like, I don't need anybody anymore. I'm free. But then my mom took me out of that school. Oh, also, they used to do really weird stuff. Like, somebody brought in lemonade. And the teacher was like, why don't we all thank Johnny for the lemonade that he brought and sharing with us? And I'm like, I don't need Johnny's lemonade. I never asked Johnny for this lemonade. I'm not thanking Johnny for this lemonade. So I don't know at what age Black sass like develops, but it clearly came up very young when it was me. And then I moved to another school, Christchurch Girls' School, epic school.
My mother went there.
Right, see? Bunch of good people. And I had 8 best friends. I counted them. Not all of them knew they were my best friend, but I was definitely best friends with all of them. So I think there was already a lot of racial politics going into play, even from like, it's one of my earliest memories in Barbados. Then the sexism. You walk down the street in Tongue.
Oh gosh.
And it's just like hungry, nasty, salivating men being like,
Sometimes in your school uniform.
Yes.
Did you have that?
I didn't have that because you know what it was? My mom had a car. So I didn't take bus.
I didn't catch a bus either.
So where did they see you?
Wait. I was allowed to take the bus to school.
Right.
But I couldn't take it back home.
Right.
And I don't think I caught the bus when I was at BCC either.
Right. Right.
But
just like, it's just, I mean, and they're like, you know, they're really horrific stories. Like this guy who said that everything after age 11 is lunch. It was 12. Age 12 is lunch.
ew.
Yeah. So and you're just like you predatory, nasty fucking piece of shit. Like, why? But it's not even that you can point out and be like, there's the bad actor, there's the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many of them just indulging in these behaviors, and then the people who let it go by, who don't like chastise them.
Because for so many people it's just like a norm.
Yeah, but it's not a norm. It's like not normal, and it's not okay. I remember when the lady came on the 12-month stamp program, and she wrote an article about harassment that she'd faced and how she left after, I think, 6 months because of just like harassment. And I'm like, yeah, you make it impossible for women to feel comfortable in public spaces. Like, you make it impossible for women to feel comfortable at the beach unless they're going with friends. Like, and not just one friend, a couple different friends.
Cannot be by yourself.
Right, you want to be in a herd. But it's silly that you can't actually decide, I want to take an afternoon swim and go in by yourself and still feel like you're safe and comfortable, and no random man is going to try to approach you and, I don't know, just say some nonsense to you.
Not unless you're by the spring.
Yeah. It's how you have to respond politely when they harass you. Because of fear that what will their reaction be if you stoops or if you tell them something back.
This is a big one. Like, because you're taught like not to kind of provoke violence, you know? And the fact is, like, if somebody's already willing to cross your boundaries by being all up in your space, like, what other
exposing
boundaries?
themselves.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I remember this time I was in Paris. Paris had a really bad problem. I was like 20 and I was in Paris. I was very cute at that point. I was very cute.
You're still gorgeous. Cute.
This is 15 years ago.
Roll my eyes.
And I was a real looker, let me tell you.
She's even cuter now. They're new.
They are new. And yeah, so I was in a phone booth calling home to my mom. This guy comes in, perfectly dressed, right? Like, looking totally normal, into the other side of the phone booth. So the phone booths face each other. The phone booths, like, my receptor is backing his so I can see everything that he's doing. Starts to unbuckle his belt. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just not even going to engage because I really need to have this conversation with my mother. I was dealing with this other situation with my, what did you call her? My... the house mother, and she was being kind of racist, and I was like, she told me that I was just like a Black American, and I was like, what does that even mean? What, like, and why would that be a problem? Why? It was bizarre. So I was like, I really need to talk this through with my mother. And he's unzipping his belt, he's pulling down his pants next. And then he's just like, he has his penis out. And I'm just like, no, I give up on this call now. That was the time for me to leave. Now is the time. And I told that story to my house mother, the one who was like telling me the racist nonsense. And she was like, yes, the men are disgusting. They're animals. You know, come inside. You've had a bad time. So it's just like racism, sexism, all that shit is so intertwined. And it's really funny how somebody who is the cause of one of it can also be the comfort for the next. Like, crazy.
Yeah, because she understands one and doesn't understand
the other. Yes, exactly.
One affects her.
Yeah, that one affects her and has affected her whole life, right? So she gets it on an intimate level. The other one, she's just like, she knew 4 Black people and thought she was hip.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, chick, seriously? But now, 15 years later, all I can think is, chick, seriously? Yeah. And I think probably the other main thing in Barbados is like, so you have the racism, we have the sexism, and then you also have the homophobia.
Oh gosh.
And the homophobia is alive and well but it's almost like a cloud in that you can't always quite touch it, but it's always there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're like, I'm in a fog. Like, what's going on? I can't touch the fog, and yet the fog is all around me. So I think I haven't had a lot of experiences of homophobia directly, but I was working on a project where we were working with like other queer people and getting their experiences. And I think it all comes down to whether or not you can pass.
Yeah, because of how you present yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So no one was looking at me being like, she's a lesbian.
Mhm.
I just know it. Although maybe somebody was, and then I would be like, hey, hopefully you're cute, I'm cute, we can make this happen. Like, but no. But the things that people have to go through with their families, with, oh my gosh, with like with the church because of the therapy that they try to send people to. I mean, really disturbing encounters with pastors that you're like, this should not be happening to anyone ever, and we need to make it stop. So Barbados, you'll always be home.
Oh, we're not going to jump into that because the Christians will have shut us down just now.
No. We can get shut down.
We will.
I feel like this conversation is one that we're gonna have to just continue another time because when I tell you that it runs deep.
It does. I joke with Lauren and Amory at this point that the toughest conversations I've had to have about these things are usually with Christians.
Yeah.
Guys on the block, you know, will have certain reservations, but for the most part, or at least my experiences, like they're receptive. Christians, they've decided this is the way it is. This is the way it's always going to be. I will not change my mind.
Yeah.
Believing without understanding.
Yeah.
Powerful
but
thing.
Also like
but also
faith without compassion.
Yeah. Like how you can pick and choose who you can treat like a person.
Yeah. Also, can we just acknowledge that everybody in Barbados fornicates? Like, no one is waiting till marriage except probably 2 people, and I salute you guys. Keep fighting the good fight. But everybody else is just fornicating like all the time, right? So if you're like, you're breaking one sin, there's no like small sin and big sin. It's just sin. So then why are you treating people like shit because of their identity?
And you know what? I'm really sorry because I know where we are and we're trying to think, but I really do feel like we're just not accepting ourselves and accepting our sexuality and accepting who we are as people. It's not something we shame. It's just we just need to accept it. We need to talk about it, and we need to fix and solve our issues, work on our issues, and let's develop.
Yeah.
Let's develop. Let's develop. This might end this song right now.
We're gonna wrap up here because we can go on like this forever.
We're not gonna stop. We are not gonna stop talking about these topics.
Yeah.
As I said, the next time we have you, we're gonna have to do like maybe a part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4.
Sounds great.
To kind of dig into this and kind of, talk about all the things. But it was a lovely having you.
It was great to be here, guys.
Next time we'll start earlier. But thank you so much.
Little special vibe.
Yes.
You know?
Thanks for hosting us because Shari hosted us today.
I'm very sorry y'all can't see the view, but out here it's gorgeous.
It really is.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Well.